Come, please take a seat.
Thank you.
One was born in China originally, and then went to the US to study. His English is perfect. I learned he did a lot of English competitions as well at school level.
Well, who told you?
Right? Well, we had some insights. He completed his MBA at Stanford University, joined a hedge fund, and as well, plus a e-truck company in the US before, just over 3.5 years ago, he founded this beautiful company, Windrose. Windrose originally is from China, then relocated to Antwerp. I think you have various organizations globally, factories in France, building up in the US as well. And obviously, Germany, as the home of trucks over 100 years ago, is one of the key markets one is trying to tackle very soon. For me, specifically interesting is as well the whole speed Windrose had over the last 3.5 years in terms of designing, developing the company, but also by securing 300 million investment from investors into this company. So I'm pretty sure this company in a few years will be listed at NASDAQ, right? So we can count on that. I like to share one slide in the beginning. Please, technique. This series, Meet the Global CEO, is a series we started probably around 2.5, 3 years ago with the University of St. Gallen. We wanted to bring a little bit of internationalization into the world of our alumni. We started actually with a friend of mine, Hubert Joly, who was the chairman and CEO of Best Buy. And we do this series now every 3 to 4 months, either physically with global CEOs or mostly on Zoom, where everyone can dial in as well. This is the second physical session we had. The last one was with Stefan. Stefan is the CEO of Kühne + Nagel, who recommended actually one to come here, and that's the plan of every Meet the Global CEO session. The speaker will then recommend the next speaker to come. So when are you ready to reveal the next speaker at the end of our chat? Yes. Yeah? Perfect. Thank you. With that, one will make a short introduction to the company, and then I will ask a few questions before we open up the Q&A session with the audience.
Thank you. Everybody can hear me? Thank you. This is the most nervous speech I've given because my wife and my parents-in-laws are here. They landed from China recently, so if you see them start to fall asleep, that's because of the jet lag. When I got here, my mother says, so who are they here to see after you? I said, they're here to see me. And she said, well, who else do they see? I said, just a small group of people who lead small businesses, like Unilever and Burberry and Kühne + Nagel. So there's no pressure. I am sure I'm the least successful of all the guest speakers so far, but I try to be the most interesting. And I hope to share a few things with you tonight that are going to be different and maybe even a little bit controversial. Why don't we go to the next page?
I think you can also.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Am I?
Over there?
Oh, why don't I go to the next page? Yes.
The remote control.
There we go. How many of you have been inside a big truck like this one before? Oh, 4 or 5 hands. Okay. Let's try a different analogy. How many of you have had a BlackBerry? Oh, man. All right. How many of you still have a BlackBerry? You sure? Okay, good. The BlackBerry was at one point half of all smartphones in the United States, 20% global market share, and one of the biggest smartphone or phone makers in the world. And today, no one generally remembers the beautiful feeling of the clicking of the keyboard. When the iPhone was unveiled by Steve Jobs, 2007, someone called Steve Ballmer, who ran Microsoft, said, no one would ever in the business world use the iPhone because no one would ever use a giant screen without keyboard. I think he's wrong, as we all know today. Second question for you is, how many of you have traveled abroad and had to look for this thing called the converter, the thing that, converts to different types of plugs. Okay. Imagine if you drove a truck across different nations in the world. So we apologize for not having the truck here today because the truck got stuck on its way from Spain to France. And one of the reasons is regulations are always a little bit different from country to country. And truck designs are really different from country to country, as you can see here. So what we try to do is try to do two things. We'd like to become the iPhone of trucks, and we'd also like people to forget about the time when they had to fumble for a different converter every time they travel to a different country. Trucks are a lot like BlackBerries, but worse, because trucks are very different from the US to Europe. And trucks have not changed since, how old do you think the trucking technology is? So the St. Gallen University was founded in 1898. The first truck was invented here in Germany 2 years before that by Gottlieb Daimler. And that technology has largely remained unchanged for the last 100 years. The first truck looked basically like this 100 years ago. What we want to do is really to take a giant leap forward and rethink the truck. Now, we're not the only one. I'm not the, I wouldn't say I'm the inventor of the smart truck. I think Tesla has done a fantastic job with the Tesla Summit program, which everybody understands and has heard of, or mostly. What we try to do is try to make it really global, right? What we try to do is try to bring our truck to what is today 17 countries, all the blue ones in the map, and then next year, 32 countries. We try to provide a single platform that's going to be so fantastically great and simple to use and be able to be unifying truck designs across the world so that we no longer run into issues of different trucks per country or per region. A couple things that are really different about this truck. We have the driver sitting in the middle, that's myself, much like a cockpit, right? And what this does is a couple of things. It really enables the driver to live, not just work, live in a space that's comfortable, technologically advanced. 5 screens, there's 2 more over here, which these 2 are the digital rear view mirrors, right? So no longer do you have to, in a rainy day, you have to find ways to clean your rear view mirror. No longer do you have these giant blind spots. And no longer do you have to suffer through old style radio as you're spending 12 to more hours a day on the truck. So we really try to make it fantastically simple to use. And also, having the driver in the middle enables us to go to markets that are right-hand steering, or the cars or the trucks drive on the other side of the road. So we really try to have a globally simple design that works for everyone. It's so large that you can put the entire basketball team inside. We're the naming sponsor of the Windrose Antwerp Giants, so one of the finest basketball teams in northern Belgium. And in what is definitely the finest truck in the world. And not to mention it's all electric. So the last piece I wanted to share, which is not about the performance of the truck or the customers, is what I call EV diplomacy. Many of you are here not just because you're interested in trucks in Germany, but because you have a global vision. And for us, we believe by working with leaders like the Belgian Prime Minister, the President Macron of France, even the Chinese president, Stanford University president, and that's my wife, right there, and then the US former ambassador to China, we really want to create a project where people can be united, especially in today's relatively crazy world, and especially US-China tariffs, European tariffs, US-European, lots of controversial discussions. We wanted to provide a platform where everyone can unite and think about just working on the same project. And that's why I'm here. So that's my introduction. I think it was over 3 minutes, but thank you for your patience and thank you for listening.
I think they will change.
Oh, change? Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you, Wen, for this impressive introduction to the company. I'd like to go back to your early years when you graduated afterwards, joined different companies you worked for.
Yes.
When you decided to, we have a few entrepreneurs here as well in the room, when you decided to build your company,
yes,
right? What were the first few challenges you were facing? And maybe share with us some pivots you had, some moments where you had to make some decisions which then paved the way for the company later on.
Yes. Another question for the audience. How many of you knew what you were going to do when you graduated from school and actually did the thing that you thought you were going to do? 2 hands, 3 hands, 4. You guys are lucky. 5. You guys are really lucky. I think, so Jensen Huang from NVIDIA says his work is a really long-term project with rapid iterations, right? And it's the same for us because you can never know. It's just impossible to predict the future. And many people fail doing that. For us, when I started the company in 2022, we were under the impression that the United States was going to really promote electrification, right? As we now know, that's a different world. In 2022, US-China trade was actually at its peak in recent history, actually in all of history. Again, that's not true for today, right? So when we started the company, we thought we were going to mostly sell in the United States. We thought that electrification was going to be heavily subsidized in the United States, both of which are almost opposite of the truth. When we started the company, we already thought about coming to Europe and building a European product, but Europe is really the birthplace of long-haul trucks, and to come to Europe, to come to the birthplace like Germany, was kind of a risky endeavor. However, what we learned is the world leaves us with no choice. In order to survive in a world where every day you wake up, you read something in the news where another tariff war is starting, someone else is saying something crazy, you just have to be prepared. And so what we do is we really try to build a global platform that's well hedged against any particular idiosyncratic event in any country. And so as we do that, we learn to quickly to iterate and to almost just sort of tack, right? In sailing, there's a concept called tacking, which is when you make these small turns. To tack well is more important than to have sort of, vision into the future. And we think of ourselves as good tackers. And that's been one of the key learnings I've had in the last 3.5 years.
Did you have your fellow tackers with you, your team already established, or how did you build the early days in the company?
I think to be successful, and I think we've had some degrees of success, is to be lucky and to recognize your luck. And the way I recognize my luck is I look at my network, I look at the mentors I have, and I really appreciate them. And I always ask them sort of, what do they think I can do? And who do they think is the next person I can talk to? So I'll give you one example who's sitting right here. So Eric is our head of European operations. He's French, but he lived in China for longer than I've lived in China. And the person who introduced us is one of our board members who formerly led a lot of the supply chain work for Decathlon, right? When I approached Bruno, who is the Decathlon executive, about how to build this business, he's never built trucks before, but I said, well, who else can you introduce me to that could be good? So on Valentine's Day 2 years ago, Eric and I met, and we went. I asked him to just join me in Belgium. He had no idea, and I said, tomorrow we're going to go meet with the Belgian Prime Minister. That was the second day he ever knew me. And we had a meeting with Mr. Bart de Wever, who's the Prime Minister now, and talking about our factory plans for Belgium and so forth. And I just asked Eric to tell the Prime Minister what he would do about our aftermarket network, right? So I think for me is to be always ready to go and be ready to embrace surprises. And every day, I promise we have no lack of surprises, but sort of appreciate the chance to even deal with the surprise and then learn from it.
Well, the harder you work, the more luck you have, is a common saying, right?
Yes.
But yet, in 2022, midst of COVID, right? You were based in the US at that time?
I was actually in China.
Oh, you were back in China?
I had fled what was the COVID in the United States to come back to China, only to run into another worst case of lockdown.
Okay, so you're based in China. You decided to build a company, right? You have pretty much 2 big players. Nikola.
Yes.
Which went bankrupt in February this year.
Yes.
Heavy player, well-funded, Tesla, iconic founder, CEO, great brand, a lot of money, a lot of horsepower.
Yes.
Why did you compete against those big players, out of nowhere? What makes the difference, in your view, at the end?
I think if you're thinking about what to do next and you realize there's no giant company in that field today, maybe that industry is not worth going to, right? So the fact that there are bigger businesses who are incumbent is usually a signal of the size of the market, right? So that's always a good sign to have giants. However, one doesn't usually like to start in a company where you're facing giants because that makes it difficult. Right? So what we do is we do two things. We understand, we study the giants in our space and relevant spaces before us, and then we try to find the right niche. So let me go back to BlackBerry, especially for the gentleman who still has a BlackBerry. When BlackBerry was starting, it was really going into the pager space. How many of you remember what the pager is? Pager is, the thing that beeps. And when BlackBerry started, it was really a two-way pager. So the phone was this way versus vertical. And they produced a really fast, simple, low data usage way to communicate on the two-way pager. Right? So that's how they competed against Motorola. When the iPhone then was founded, it was competing against BlackBerry, which had half of the market share and was hugely profitable. The iPhone did not go into business users at first. Mm-hmm. The iPhone had this huge screen, which combined the iPod, the phone, and all the apps on the Mac OS system. And people who are innovative, people who are in entertainment, people who are in show business, people who are sort of just experimental with their products, tried the iPhone first, and then they fell in love with it, right? So for us, what we do is we go after a huge market where incumbents are huge, and then we find the right niche. What is our niche? This truck is actually the imperfect truck for most of the sort of continental European use case because it is a little bit bigger and longer than the typical cab-over design. However, this truck is perfect for long haul and heavy hauling, right? So there was a video that showed hauling 2 trailers. So we focus on markets that are Nordics, of course, France and Germany, Spain, United States, Canada, Australia, and China, where there's huge stretches of highway, or the traditional sort of urban trucking doesn't quite cover, right? So that is not 100% of the market. If you ask Kuehne+Nagel, which is our customer, Kuehne+Nagel doesn't use our trucks for their daily sort of urban usage. We focus on cross-border, right, multinational trucking, especially heavyweights. So again, finding the right niche is really important. And what we learned is today our truck just landed in Chile, which is in South America. How many of you have been to Chile? Oh, fantastic. Wow, this is a well-prepared crowd. In Chile, you have a long stretch of highway, right? The Chilean trucking use case is surprisingly like the Nordic, Finnish, Norwegian, and Swedish trucking use case, which is then a bit like the United States trucking case, which is from California to Arizona to then Texas. Right? So even if you don't connect these 3 locations naturally, it's actually a lot like what we do. Also, we do double trailer haulage from Spain to the Nordics. Again, that's not everyday trucking, but it's enough business for us to drive a niche into the market. That's how we think about it. Sorry for the trucking jargon.
It's fine. We'll get into that bit by bit.
Okay,
right?
Great.
Back to competitors, Nikola, Tesla, etc. Yes. I think one key difference as well, you're sourcing from China.
Yes.
Right? Does that ultimately make a difference where you're much faster to the market than others?
It makes a huge difference. Yes. When we think about starting a business, we solve effectively not an invention problem. So the difference between Thomas Edison and myself, there are many, but he's much more of an inventor where he takes on technology risk. We don't take on technology risk. We solve what is effectively a complex system integration problem, which is every piece of this truck is known, right? Every bit of this truck, there's a motor, there's batteries, there's bodies, glasses, screens. Everything we have in this truck is found in something else, usually a car or airplane or rockets, right? So what we do is we try to find the perfect match. The perfect recipe has to come in two pieces. One is the recipe itself, but two is, of course, where you get the ingredients, right? So many times, the better funded the entrepreneur is, the more likely they are to forget about the supply chain risks because they ignore how much money goes into paying for the things. Once you have the right design, you then go look for the right supplies. That's wrong because you've lost all the time you have. If the right design is based on products or supplies which don't exist, right? So for us, we really stand on the shoulders of giants, which is BYDs and Teslas, right? The Tesla cars in China are basically a Chinese car. It's 98% sourced in China. And so looking at Tesla and BYD and all the other EV makers in China and what they've done, we understand Chinese EV supply chain is over 70% of the world's total EV supplies. And so there's no reason we don't go there. It would be completely ridiculous if we didn't source from China. And the more divided the world is today, the bigger the advantage to ourselves is because it's actually more difficult for the Western OEMs or customers to appreciate China. Right? So I learned that there's a trip being planned by the university to study China, to visit China. I think that's fantastic, but I have to say that's happening much less than before. So that's actually one of the advantages we have, which is to overcome boundaries as they're becoming bigger.
Now you want to scale up now big time as well with the funding you had and the growth of your team. It's exceptional. What I learned is you're going to pretty much plan to go everywhere in the world, right? Australia, New Zealand, Asia, US, Europe, Latin America, all at the same time.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Typically we learn, go step by step, right? Even many startups do too much at once, right? Why do you go this way?
Yes. The conventional wisdom would say, don't run before you walk, right? I think we're basically flying before we walk. But the difference is not only do we have a new product, but we're also structurally changing the way the products are built, sold, and used, right? So traditionally, when you think about who buys trucks, you think of these truck liners, which are these truck fleets, right? Truck fleets are hugely fragmented. The top 10 or 20 truck fleets per country is usually no more than 5%. In the United States, in China, the top fleets don't make up for more than 10% of the market. So it's hugely fragmented. So the question is, how do you cut through the fragmentation? Because if you're selling to 10,000 different customers, you shouldn't be doing that in 17 different countries. What we do is, first of all, we have a standard product that's globally recognized. It's the same thing globally, right? What you see is what you get almost no matter where you go. The second thing we do is we go to customers who are global, so Kunanago, right? But the third thing we do is we actually go to the end user of the truck. So who are the end users of the trucks? 5% of the world's GDP is moved on the long-haul truck. So if you look at your table or your pockets, you have iPhones, you have Dell computers, you have iPads, you have Coca-Colas, you have, I think that's a Perrier, you have clothing, Nike and so forth. We work with all of these top brands, right? So as the customers, who are now the users or the passengers in the truck, understand our product, they're able to almost tell their operators to go to our truck because they understand our truck. And in their procurement process, they're buying these trucks globally across all regions. So we no longer have to do door-to-door sales each time, right? So the scalability, which is the economy of scale of our business model, is on top of the economy of scale of our design. Okay. And then there's also network effect, which is, this is a new product. The same way the BlackBerry was first picked up. When someone uses this product, they like to brag about it because this is a fantastically new thing that's good for the environment, also cheaper than diesel over long term. So then if PepsiCo sees Coca-Cola using our product, what do you think PepsiCo would do? Right? They would at least try it out. We just have to make sure the product lives up to its expectations so the customers keep the products. And that's how we scale to all the major markets at the same time. And the customers like that because they're trying this new product. Yep. They prefer to be able to test it out in every market. And because we can do that, they're actually much more likely to cut down their procurement cycle much more quickly and be proud about it.
Maybe let's go back to technology, innovation of your company.
Yes.
Right? Together with scaling, what do you want to achieve over the next 12 months? What are your, I learned from you when we prepared for this session, you're thinking quite short term on what are the next milestones, but maybe share what you can share, right? What's the plan for the next 12 months? What do you want to achieve?
Yes. I think I sometimes think long term as well, except for planning my travels and such. So thank you for your patience. Our long-term goal is very simple. This product needs to become the standard of every truck. We're not in it to become the sort of a lone star. Our job is not to become the only meaningful EV truck maker. My job is to promote the design so that everybody uses the same design. In the hardware space, you generally cannot be the unique design. So if you look at everybody's smartphone, right? The only innovation in smartphones in the last 10 years is the foldable screen, which is the thing that my father-in-law has, right? But besides that, I dare you to find another true innovation in the iPhone. Who can tell me the difference between the iPhone 17 and the iPhone 16 or the 10? It's the same thing. So in the hardware space, you can only hope to become the standard setter. You cannot hope to become the monopolist. The other goal that we have is to provide so much transparency that sometimes our customers are annoyed with us. The trucking business is generally a 5 to 10% EBITDA margin, if that. And it's painful. Okay, you seem to be suffering from the trucking business. Fantastic. But you're here today, so it means you're probably above zero in margin. It's so painful because you don't know where the truck is. You don't know who's in your truck. Sometimes you don't even know what truck you're driving because you go through so many layers of information. The simple question of where the hell is my thing today is hard to answer. So as we provide more transparency, we're going to be able to make this trucking business finally easy to understand and efficient. Now what that means is number of the lower efficiency players will have to disappear as we consolidate or help our customers consolidate. But that's just the reality of the evolution that this product has to go through. So that's our vision, which is to be the standard product, the standard recipe, the synonym for the category. When people think of long-haul electric truck, I like them to think of the Windrose. And then to provide transparency so that everybody benefits, except for the select few who are really low efficiency in the totem pole. For the next 12 months, the answer is very simple. We'd like to deliver 2,000 trucks to all of our key markets. And Germany will be one of our key markets. France and Germany are the two biggest markets in continental Europe. And on top of these, the rest of the world would like to get to 2,000. And that will be a tiny, tiny piece of the world's total carbon emissions. However, that's a step towards making the world 5% cleaner. And 5% is a precise number. These trucks account for about 5% of carbon emissions, which are greater than every other kind of vehicle on wheels. Everything that you drive, ever sit in, ever touch, ever see, added up together, does not create more greenhouse gas than particularly this kind of trucks combined. So our goal is to move towards that 5% cleaner goal one step at a time.
So that's sustainability. In preparation for this talk, I interviewed another expert as well to get some details. And maybe the data are wrong, but I learned...
Can be good.
That was my own estimate at the end. 2/3 of the cost of running a truck is labor cost, and 1/3 of running a truck is actually the oil or the gas you're using to operate. Does that make sense, roughly?
It's about 1/3, 1/3. So it's one third. There are three pieces. 1/3 is the fuel, 1/3 is the labor. The rest is usually tolls, roads, insurance, depreciation, everything.
Okay, that's part. That one you can't really influence.
Correct. Right? The only changeable factors are these two things.
Okay. So by when do you have trucks without driver anymore? Because that's a big part of the cost as well.
Yes.
Is that part of your plan?
Yes.
We have, Wen studied in the West Coast. I studied in the East Coast of the US. So we have some different understanding of how to bring the message across. But by when do you have, driverless trucks? Is that in your plan?
Yes. It has to be, because the world has to be moving to AI very quickly. We have no choice. AI is at the point where it's actually more useful than many people can be in a certain context, right? So what we're seeing today is, in trucks, self-driving is today not achievable yet, right? So the truckers still have their jobs. However, we need to provide the hardware for the next generation of trucks. The original iPhone did not have an app store, which many of you probably don't remember. The original iPhone only had a number of apps. It wasn't until iPhone 4 that the App Store was introduced. And now the App Store economy is the biggest economy in the mobile internet space, right? So what we try to do is try to start with the iPhone, or like NVIDIA GPUs, which is we provide the base layer of all sorts of autonomy functions, right? Because there are different autonomies for different use cases. We can be automating truck in a yard, inside a port, outside a port, high speed, low speed, on highway, off highway, right? These are different use cases, and they call for different applications. So what we'd like to do is to provide the perfect interface. So going back to the idea of becoming a standard and then enable players to sit on top of it. I've made this mistake myself. So coming out of Stanford, I studied machine learning, which was the AI before AI was sort of the sexy topic. And the machine learning specialists, the statisticians, usually try too hard to automate an antiquated hardware. So in other words, we were trying to automate a horse carriage. Remember, the truck hadn't changed in 100 years. In fact, the original design of the diesel truck dates back to the Roman days of the ox cart, right? So trying to automate an analog piece of device, which is terrible, is impossible no matter how smart the software is. So you have to start with the smarter robot. And we need to start with that. So the robot readiness we can predict, which is in the next 5 years. The software, the brain, the functionality really depends on the use case and the software in question, which we work with all sorts of partners for. Right? So I've learned my lessons from Elon Musk, which is try not to make too many predictions, especially don't promise on timelines.
Maybe the last question before we open for the audience for Q&A.
Yes.
You founded a company a bit more than 3 years ago, got 300 million investment. In your pitch to investors,
yes,
what was the key piece where you believe it resonated the most with investors? Why they fund your company?
Contrary to my belief when I started pitching, because 2022 was the worst time in the EV industry to start an EV company, because 2022 was the time when battery pricings were rising. And when the last EV bubble just popped, especially in the United States, so Nikola, Rivian, many other companies had these huge market caps, bigger than GM, Ford, Volkswagen, but they all generally failed or died. So when I was pitching to investors, I realized I was losing their attention, I was losing their interest because they had no optimism left. So then one day I was talking to one of my investors and I said one thing, I said, what if we succeeded? What if we actually worked out as a company? We could define the next 100 years of how trucks are made and how trucks are operated. And I think that clicked immediately. Right? I think too many times I try to predict the future. I try too hard and it doesn't work out. But if you do one thing right, every great entrepreneur generally only has to do one thing right. Every great inventor generally only did one thing right. So if you guys understand, if you guys follow the story of Sir Isaac Newton, who was a pretty smart guy, he lost all his money in a bubble or in a scam. Many of the smartest people at the time bought tulips from the Netherlands, which were not a good investment at the end, right? Everyone generally really has to do one thing right. And so for us, that was my pitch. You know, what if this design is the right design and that could change the world?
Thank you very much. Wen, I'd like to open the audience for questions. Yes.
Hello, my name is Julius. I'm from the University of St. Gallen originally and working now in a startup in Berlin. My question would be regarding the range of the Windrose truck, especially while you want to go into the long-haul market. how do you handle that? And also a follow-up question is regarding the range, how do you want to handle the infrastructure risk of finding parking lots and charging the Windrose truck?
The trucks we have today generally run about 670 kilometers on a single charge, and we can fully recharge in about an hour. So in about the time that you guys have been on this boat, we would have fully charged 700 plus kilowatt hour of battery. Our next generation, within the next 18 months, will take us to about 800 kilometers based on more density in the battery design and also enhanced chemistry in the battery itself, as well as much longer lifetime for far over 1.6 million kilometers. So that's our range. And now that range should be generally enough because every driver in Europe and most parts of the world has to rest about every 4 to 5 hours. And the other thing we must not forget is the human bladder does have a range limitation, which is generally speaking, the driver has to rest and use the restroom or smoke a cigarette, right? So there's many other factors that constrain the range actually before the battery itself runs out. The other thing we must think about is charging, right? So how many of you, just another question, complain about the iPhone having bad battery range? And how many of you still buy the iPhone after you complain about the battery problem? Yeah. So the iPhone, as it went from the original generations to the later ones, actually shrunk its battery. Remember the time when we had these aux cable, the thing for the headphones and the aux, it went inside the phone? When the iPhone went from, removed the aux cable, it was actually to create more space for the battery. But after that, iPhone added more devices in the phone itself. The only thing to sacrifice was the battery size. So you're actually paying for possibly the worst range battery in the iPhone in the last 10 generations. But the functionality is so great that you don't complain anymore. Same for us. The truck range shouldn't be limitless because there is a limit to how heavy the battery can be and how much you pay for the battery. So you have to combine that with fast charging. Now the question is, how do you know where the fast charging is, right? So we today work with about 300 and plus chargers globally, public and private. What we do is we try to be super compatible. 2 chargers, 1 on each side. We can be compatible with any charging standards you know about, CCS1, CCS2, MCS, and so forth. But we also focus on key highway corridors. So everywhere we go, we focus on corridors. In Australia, we call it the Hume Highway, which is Brisbane to Sydney to Melbourne. In the United States, it's really the I-10, Los Angeles to Phoenix, and then I-35, which is in Texas, from Dallas to Laredo on the Mexican border. In Europe, it's clear where the highways and many of the corridors run through Belgium. That's one reason why we're headquartered in Belgium, right? So we think of predictable highway use cases. And across these use cases, there's consensus about the density, and the chargers are being built. So in Germany, we'll be working with actually a French company called ENGIE, one of their biggest energy distributors. In rest of the Europe, there's of course Milans and so forth. So we found enough charging sites around these concentrated corridors to make it work.
Wen,
Yes.
My name is Min. I'm a fellow Chinese and HSG Alumni. My question is regarding what is your perspective between balance scale up as a startup and achieve customization as per European Union, or different countries in Europe still have different product requirements when it comes to the truck. So what is your take on that, and what is your strategy for your company?
Yes. So you have 2 questions. One is INSEAD the better business school than Singal? Sorry.
It's from St. Gallen, just everybody is aware.
Okay, that's how she got into the, okay, got it. Good choice of husband. There's 2 questions. One is how do we scale, and 2 is how do we think about the customization needs. The scaling question is actually very easy. You should only scale in today's world if you have a profitable product. In the internet days, in the days of Uber, which is actually quite prominent in Germany, right? There's a Uber stadium in Berlin, right? In the case of internet, you could scale and lose money. You could have widening losses as you scale because there was unlimited amount of capital. Unfortunately, in case you haven't been paying attention, capital is a little bit less unlimited than before these days, especially for businesses like ours in the hardware space. So you should only scale when you're profitable, which, by the way, is how most businesses were built before venture capital was a thing. Most businesses only were built when you made money and you grew as you made more money. So today we have a somewhere between 20 to 30% gross profit margin product. Right out of the gate, our first unit ever was 20+% gross margin, which is shocking because when I told this to investors, they asked me, is the sign negative or positive? I said, positive, is where we make money. And they're so shocked because EV companies are so used to burning cash and subsidizing their product. We cannot afford to do that, especially if we want to scale across 5 continents. And the way we get to that is, if you change the way you design the product, you can make your per unit cost so much lower by designing one product for all markets, right? Therefore, we're not amortizing $5 billion of R&D expenses per year, as many traditional truck makers do, because they're designing every single type of truck for every market. So that goes to your second question about customization. I am against customization. As the famous Steve Jobs once said, don't ask your customer what they want. You just build a thing so great, they will love it. Now, I don't have that luxury, but we try to guess what is the right recipe that enough customers, at least 20% of the global businesses will like, right? So today we work with mostly top 49, top 50 truck fleets globally and per region. And the top guys generally want the same thing, which is long range, fast charging, high reliability, but they don't always have to get super customized. And if you are offering functionalities that are 20% better in every regard than diesel trucks, you can sometimes get away with doing less customization. Lastly, our global truck platforms are about 85% in common. A traditional truck, whether that's German brands or Swedish brands, have probably less than 50% or even 25% in common between a US and European truck. And therefore, you're reinventing basically another truck for a new market, and we don't have to do that. So that enables us to scale quickly, profitably, while not needing to really customize too much per market.
So skyrocketing sales, high margins, yet asset intense, capital intense. Are you still planning an investment round, a funding round before your listing plans?
We're always in the fundraising business, but fundraising shouldn't be used to subsidize your production, right? Fundraising should be invest into what is called profitable capex or profitable investments. There's a big difference. We noticed that many of the EV companies before us who've raised so much more money have generally invested in oversupply and huge amounts of excessive production, and that has not turned into profits. Right, so what we do today is we've effectively already paid off all of our upfront capex and R&D expenses for this product. So that means we're not really capital intensive. And why is that? Because one, we're a global platform. We're not inventing 5 trucks for 5 continents where it's one truck. The second is our supply chain in China especially is really fantastic. And don't forget, all of your smartphones are made in China, and computers, and smart devices. So in China, many of our peers have spent the money, invested in a almost shared supply chain of EV, batteries and components that we don't have to pay for the factories ourselves, right? So these two things combined, which is riding on the right moment, right wave of investment before us, and avoiding making the wrong investments, is what enables us to grow profitably. Now, are we raising money? Yes. And why are we raising money? We'd like to build more factories. Again, not these huge billion-dollar factories, but we're looking at modularized factories. Belgium, confirmed. France, confirmed. Germany, I think is worth studying. United States, definitely. Right, but these are more like how you put together an IKEA furniture, which is assembly plants. These are modular sites where we invite our customers. So we will invite all of you to come into one of our factories and to see how we assemble the trucks. And then the customers can take delivery of the trucks right out of the factory, right? It's almost like the factory store concept. You go to the factory, and then when there's something wrong with the trucks, the customers can take these trucks back to our factories to repair. We'll also have chargers built on the factories, usually close to windmills and other sustainable sources of electricity. And the customers can buy trucks, charge trucks, repair them, and buy the next batch of trucks, right? So we really want to make them into, so the sweet spot is there. In the United States, depending on your state, you may or may not be able to achieve it. In Europe, in the Nordics, we know for a fact that we can give away the trucks for free, and the customers can still save money, right? So that we can assume the trucks are totally going to waste. In continental Europe, a little bit problematic, right? So there we need help from the governments, from the sort of sustainable ways of generating electricity. You mean how does the sustainability compare to a diesel truck?
Take into account fully loaded environmental costs also, then how much CO2 is produced.
I see what you mean. Okay. Is the truck clean but the supply chain dirty? Yeah. Look, we cannot promise 100% total emissions erased from the earth, right? The general principle about EV trucks, the same for EV cars, is actually, if you look at this picture, so about 50 years ago, if you took an airplane into Los Angeles, the pilot couldn't see the runway. It's covered in smog, right? Today, if you go to LA, which will be the host of the Olympics next term, is pristine, super clean. California Air Resources Board has changed the emissions regulations to push the engine makers to make cleaner engines. Now, that does not mean the manufacturing itself is the cleanest. But I believe step one towards making a cleaner planet is you have to concentrate the dirtiness into select sites. And again, these things cause 5% of the world's emissions. When the tailpipe emissions are coming out of the truck, you and I, we can smell it. If you walk close to the truck, your face will be covered in soot, right? However, if you at least concentrate the dirty stuff into a factory where you're able to then centrally process and clean it, you can control the dissipation of the emissions much more effectively. Now, eventually the right goal is to move towards sustainable supply chain. So one of the things we do is we're really promoting LFP battery, which is lithium ferric phosphate, instead of NMC, which was popular for a while. LFP battery, especially if you introduce manganese as a sorry, this is the part where I put you to sleep. But if you introduce manganese is the top 20 richest elements on Earth, so that the digging and mining of it is so much simpler, instead of cobalt, which is found in Congo and is mined expensively and dangerously, right? So there's all sorts of things we're doing towards the right direction, but you have to start with the dirtiest thing. That's closest to us, because I'm trying to protect, everyone who drives on a highway. I mean, even there's trucks here. I mean, as you walk by, if they didn't turn off the engine, you could have smelled the dirtiness and the emissions. So we have to start from the first thing and then gradually move our work towards the full supply chain sustainability.
Hi, Sebastian from Wharton University. You mentioned you may not build a factory in Germany. If you had customers here, how would you solve the repair issue? So you said you're going to repair in the factory. So how are you going to repair the things? And why would you not build in Germany a factory?
Okay, the factory is not the only place where we repair trucks. So we generally have a 3-tier system, and Eric is the expert, so feel free to pin him down after this. But we generally work with our customers who have huge fleets and they have workshops. Konenago, for example, they can repair a lot of the stuff within their own workshops. We have independent workshops. In Norway, we work with, in the Nordics, we have a partner called Raskone, which is the biggest independent workshop. And the last layer is our own site, where we need to come back and do major surgery on the truck. So there are 3 layers, and I think that answers the first question. The second one is, why wouldn't we build a factory in Germany? I think it's to go back to your question, Andreas, about how do we think about starting a company with such giants in the industry? I mean, if you think Nikola and Tesla are giants, you should talk about a company called Daimler, right? And Volkswagen, right? So if we wanted to start the company in the middle of the world's most prestigious birthplace of trucks, we would have had a really difficult time attracting talent and also trying to break away from the traditional way of thinking, right? So I think Germany was not the right place for us to start. And I think we made the right choice by being careful, by being focused, and by being also humble. But I do think Germany continues to be a fantastic place. I mean, Tesla has a huge factory here, and a number of car makers are also moving here. So I think Chinese car maker XPeng is partnering with Magna, I think in Germany or in Austria. In general, the German-speaking markets are huge markets for us, and obviously long heritage and fantastic ecosystem for talent. So I think Germany continues to be a really good choice. Maybe my answer will be more concrete next time I see you.
One question in the back. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Yannick, currently trying to build a mobility startup. What is the single biggest reason that customers buy your truck over, let's say, a semi?
What is the reason why they buy our truck instead of a Tesla semi-truck? Yeah, there's two reasons. One is you cannot buy a semi-truck outside of the United States. Now, why would anybody buy our truck in the United States? We actually had a discussion with the customer yesterday. The answer is simple. If you buy the Tesla semi-truck, you would have to purchase the Tesla charger set. Only the Tesla charger, which runs on a Tesla proprietary protocol. It's the same as saying if you walk into the store, you have to buy a Samsung phone with a Samsung charger, plug into the Samsung set, only running on Samsung protocol. That's not to say the Tesla products are bad, but in the trucking world, which is a dissipated, fragmented business, which is really bad for carbon emissions. But we really try to travel the world to try to understand everywhere, right? So our truck is the same thing. It's almost plug and play. Literally, you plug in the charger and it works. So that's one, according to our customers, really the fundamental reason. There's a few smaller things. We do offer a sleeper bed. Remember the basketball team in the truck? The Tesla only has 3 seats, so you have to sit for 12 hours. We really try to make it into a driver-friendly experience. And I think that's also had an impact on the truckers themselves.
Hi, thank you. Also from St. Gallen, ex-alumni or alumni. I was wondering, you already talked about profitability and you went a bit into the trade-off of battery size and range.
Yes.
I think when it comes to operating an EV truck, yes, the size of the battery also really implicates how much you can load and thus how commercially viable it is to operate.
Yes.
So compared with a diesel, do you think, is it already competitive? And if not, when will the unit economics, in your opinion, if you have to make a prediction, be competitive?
Yes. So the question is, how do we make the economic case, right, for our customers? Europe is not the world's best place to do that yet. In China, we're fully diesel parity. In fact, our customer in China, which is a company called Carry Logistics, which uses our trucks for Apple, Dell, and a number of high-end products, also Louis Vuitton bags, they're modeling our truck as if they're depreciating the entire truck after 5 years, meaning they're assuming they throw away the truck after the 5th year. They're still saving money relative to diesel. So in China, obviously, the electricity to diesel pricing difference is big enough to make it worth it, right? But one thing to remember is this. The big difference between electricity and diesel is very simple. Electricity is unlimited because there are unlimited ways in our lifetime to generate electricity. Solar, wind, hydraulic. You can also burn lots of stuff. Diesel, however, is limited by definition. In our lifetime, the next round of more diesel, you'd have to wait a couple billion years for the stuff to form. So globally speaking, structurally, generating every kilowatt hour of electricity, no matter how you do it, is somewhere around 10 cents euro per kilowatt hour, which for those of you electricity nerds mean you have the business case. So the question is just how do you enable more generation of electricity?
Hey, Martin from European Business School. I have a question. How will you protect your knowledge? Assume you are very successful. How does Volvo not copy and paste exactly what you have? Because everything is not yours, right?
There were a number of trucks parked outside. How many of you can tell the difference between a Mercedes truck or a Volvo truck, right? So, like I mentioned, we have to be frank here, which is in the hardware business, your design is almost never the true secret sauce, right? So NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, who's the CEO, one time said the TCO, the total cost of ownership of using NVIDIA chips in the data center is so fantastically cheap that even if the competitors gave away their chips for free, the customers still pay for the expensive NVIDIA chip because they're saving much more money over time and getting higher performance. So all chips look the same, right? So in our business, now many of my colleagues like to warn me as well, which is not to overly share the design, but I think we've come to a consensus, which is you cannot truly protect. I mean, you can take the model, which we actually have two here. So one of them is for Andreas, of course, and the other one may be for the best question of the evening or something like that. You pick. This thing is anatomically precise. You took this, you can scan the CAD file out, you can build the truck next week. So our customers are not looking for just the hardware. They're looking for our understanding of the market and how we define how trucks are used. So our soft power, our understanding of the customer, and our almost sometimes free consulting. I mean, we've thought through every way possible how our customers should use this truck. And we're there over the long run to stay with them, to help them iterate and get to better usage. We even sometimes tell our customers what other trucks to buy besides our truck. But I think that relationship and trust is really the way, is the texture, is the thing that connects us with our customers. I have a young man here.
Hi, my name is Nikita. I'm a student here in Berlin, and I was gonna ask more about the slightly off-topic question about the name of the company.
Oh, that's not off.
So, I was thinking. I read the event details before the event.
Okay.
Windrose.
Yes.
So what we learned in school is that Windrose is this map for visualizing the wind directions and the strengths and stuff.
That's good.
So I kind of remember that, and I thought about how this has anything to do with wind, and like, isn't that an odd choice?
Implied by the fact that I chose the name, it's a good choice, but here's why. Your answer is almost precisely there. We think of sailing. Oh, sorry, there's two versions. The sophisticated version is this. In sailing, you have this thing called the windrose, which is showing you the direction and strength of the wind, depending on the direction and the time of the day. With that, you can tack well. And I mentioned tacking is what we do. So I sailed a little bit in college. I was a really bad sailor, but I remember the concept. In our truck, if you think about this truck, as you go on the highway, 1/3 of the total energy consumption is to overcome air resistance. 1/3. At high speeds, it almost doesn't matter how heavy the thing is. Your shape, the thing that cuts into the wind, drives almost all of your variation in consumption, which then has direct impact on our range. So how to understand air resistance, how to do well in the wind tunnel is actually the most important thing we do. One of the most important. The second thing is as a business, every day we're hit with surprises. When I started the company, I was widely regarded as a cheap copycat of the Tesla. And then I was in Belgium, actually, in the Dutch newspaper in Belgium, I was suspected to be a Chinese spy, which I took as a compliment because spies are well-dressed and fashionable. And then every once in a while we're supposed to be bankrupt. We're supposed to be never homologatable, never certifiable. The standard driving configuration, according to many industry leading specialists, can never be approved because no truck has ever had the driver in the middle. The same way no cell phone ever had a large glass screen before 2007. So every day we're hit with some sort of, surprising, annoying resistance, just like the wind. So if you sail well, you can sail upwind. If you don't sail well, you get a downwind direction, and then you lose your momentum. Right? So that's what happened to many of our, I think, industry peers several years ago. They were raising money, I think, luckily but easily, and I think they were just they lost the way to think about how to be humble and be ultra careful. Now, the second version of the answer is, when I went to Stanford, we lived in a house on the street called Windrose Place. That's how we got the name.
Very good.
It's hard to ask the customer to change everything. And so what we do is we try to be really compatible, right? Compatibility is my middle name. As you see in my person, right? I grew up in China, so you can tell from my parents. But my wife and I, we fly about 400,000 kilometers a year.
To your sales in the United States.
Yeah, we're taking money from every state possible. We have money from the 2 cities in China, or 3, Hefei, Suzhou, and Hong Kong. We have money from the number of pension funds and endowments funds in the US, I believe, Singapore, and also Europe. So we have nothing against taking money from states. If anything, in today's world, like I shared on my diplomacy page, you must work well with governments. And so I think there's nothing wrong with that. What we do ensure is we maintain independence. And the fact that we have so many different governments involved actually enables us to be neutral and open. And that's actually our mission. And that's really, when I started the company, many people convinced me to really hide the Chinese-ness, right? If you search our name on the New York Times, there's a big piece about how I talk about how a Chinese company today tries to thrive in Trump's world, right? And I think you can still do that if you manage it carefully, but if you openly embrace the fact that the world is sometimes politically charged, and if you take advantage of it and try to bring value to all the countries that we sell trucks to, we hire people in, or even build factories in, I think that's the best way to do it.
I'm Stefan from Harvard.
Oh, Harvard.
I'm interested in your sales process. I could imagine that you have different buyers, the driver, the purchase director, maybe the ESG manager, whatever.
Yes.
So your sales guys have to have a lot of different channels. So how does it work? You said you have a trust relationship, but you cannot sell by yourself to all the countries. So how does it work?
How do we sell in organizations that have many decision makers, right? It's hard. It's really difficult. I think what we try to do is the following. We try to create a chance for the stakeholders to actually work together. In fact, for any given customer we have, we spend more time interacting and connecting their different stakeholders than they usually do themselves. So we're actually the common textile. We're the thing that connects them, because we become a project. So let's take Siva, for example, a huge French, world's top 5 trucking or logistics business. Today, actually tomorrow, you see news press about our work with them in Spain. We already worked with them in China. We're also going to work with them in the United States, rest of Europe, UK, and Australia, and also Saudi Arabia. Right? So what we try to do is we actually try to provide the common stage for the stakeholders to work together. And I think they appreciate that.
Maybe one more last question. Anyone has a question?
I'm the only person behind you, between you and your beers, so I think we have to.
Hi, I'm Figile, and I'm a business owner, but I'm also here through a concept you spoke about earlier. You said you attribute your luck how you recognize your luck, and I really like that. It's not a question. I think all the great questions have been asked.
Great.
It's a compliment. I really love the solution of having the driver in the middle and being able to literally go anywhere across the world. So thank you, actually. I love innovative products, and this is a really, sounds simple, but really kind of groundbreaking.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Well, one will still stay with us. The beauty here, he can't escape, right? Unless you want to swim. But well, I'd like to thank you on behalf of St. Gallen University and all the other alumni schools here for this very insightful session. I trust for all of you, there were some great insights you can implement as well for your lives. I'd like to come back to our initial question on the next speaker.
Yes.
Right. Are you ready to reveal your secret so far?
I think so. Well, I think I mentioned this brand name a couple of times, which is Decathlon or Decathlon. Decathlon has been one of our longest supporting customers and champions in the sustainability. So I would like to ask Javier, who's the CEO, to be able to join the next session.
It's fantastic. Yes. Thank you very much. Being personally very much in the sport business, I'm very much looking forward. It's a truly global company, yes. Right? A great brand, and we definitely will find the link on how they work with you also.
Yes.
So this session we probably will plan for this first half 2026.
Yes.
The next session will be on the 4th of December with the CEO of Nestlé, which will be an online session.
Also a customer of our trucks.
That's right, and even much bigger business opportunity there as well.
Yes.
We can cover that as well, so thank you. Is there any last message you'd like to give to the audience?
Yes, I think, like I mentioned, I was really quite nervous when I walked into the room because I think this is my first speaking engagement in Germany. We've been in various German language newspapers in Germany, but it's my first in-person interaction, and I was afraid that my message wouldn't be frankly as exciting or inspiring as the previous business leaders who managed Fortune 500 companies. But I think you guys have been very kind to me, and you guys have been kind to my parents and my wife in welcoming us and supporting us. And that reminds me of why I started the company in the first place, which is, let's say you do something, even if there's only one person whose life you can make better, I think it's then worth your efforts. So despite all the challenges we face and all the problems we have and all the, using the millennial term, all the haters we always have, and maybe it's true for all of you as well, I think just always remember, did you do something that impacted somebody's life in a positive way? And if the answer is yes, then you should keep doing it. Thank you.
Well, the way how we can make this evening truly memorable for the next person, right, in a positive way, you mentioned that you like to donate this truck.
Yes.
Right, now I was thinking about different options. We can go for who is the highest clapping hands person here in the room, but I leave it...
the most beer.
That's right, but I leave it up to you. Out of the questions, comments, you like to give this truck to.
Oh, man. Leave me with the hard question.
Come on. You're making hard decisions every day, so...
I thought that was going to be easy.
You can walk.
All right. Let's see. Why don't I do this? We were introduced by the CEO himself. So why don't I leave this with you? Because this is your boat, and I think many people will come to the boat. You have to promise me you will show them this truck model. And there you go. Thank you. Can we do a photo together?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It will have a nice place. I think we will put it into the front room where it's our board meeting room.
And in front of the beers, so people have to get past
No, not in front of the beers. In our board meeting room. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. It was a very nice talk. Thank you. And I think now we go over to the relaxed part.
Fantastic.
Some nice drinks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shall we do a picture together? All right, let's do a photo together. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.